So I'd like to welcome everybody here. My name is Matthew Malcolm. I'm the Creative Industries Development Officer with the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Declan Keeney and also Deepa Manclair, who will be speaking today. So I will move on to our presentation. So I'll be discussing the kind of nuts and bolts of the application process, and I'll go over some housekeeping as well. So first of all, some housekeeping about today. Questions and answers will be available at the end of the session. And if you want to ask a question, then you can do that through the chat function. And just to let everybody in attendance know that the session is being recorded for people who can't attend the event, and this will be shared online afterwards. If anybody's experiencing any technical difficulties, you can just see about leaving and rejoining to see if you can connect okay. So introducing the program, I'd just like to say that on behalf of the Arts Council, we're delighted to be working again with Future Screens, both as partners and as match funders on this. They're able to bring their experience and expertise in the creative industries to our grant programs. So with this, we're hoping to help artists to move as much as possible into the digital art space. And we're looking at working on the intersection between the arts and creative technology. So this award is specifically for individual artists in their personal practice. If you're employed within the arts or in academia, you can still apply, but you'll need to have proof from your employer or from your academic institution that this isn't linked either to your employment or your study. We have awards available of up to 10K for this, but remember, you can still apply for less. There's a couple of really important points about the application to us. I'll repeat these later, but I just want to stress them. First of all, make sure you apply before the deadline so you can prepare your application in advance so that if there are any problems, these can be resolved beforehand, especially if there are any technical delays. If you leave it to the last minute, it can be hard to get those sorted in time. When you have applied, you'll receive a response email to tell you that your application's been submitted. So check that you've received that. If you haven't, let us know. Also, make sure that you submit all the required documents outlined in the guidance notes. If you don't supply all the documents and meet all those criteria, you will be ineligible. So please read that carefully and include it in your application. Also wanted to say a little bit about why we're running this program, what the need is for the project. As we all know, COVID's been devastating for the arts sector. And last year, that's forced many artists and audiences to engage differently, both how they engage digitally with their audiences and also how they digitally deliver their arts. So people's skills have been sort of developed over the last year to overcome the challenges that have presented themselves. So this program seeks to allow you to utilize and further develop these skills. The Arts Council has also been taking the opportunity to conduct research. Although it's not published yet, we conducted a digital ambition survey, 57 arts organizations, to look at what they see the future of digital is within the arts sector. And there were some really strong messages coming from this, such as the changing engagement of audiences, especially young audiences, the fast pace of technological changes, and that digital art's expensive to create. Also that it's not just upskilling, but also finding people with the right skills and expertise to help you deliver your digital art. So also coming through is that digital art can't replace the in-person arts, but that they can exist side by side and that they're both important. And also just very quickly from an Arts Council perspective, from our priorities and our 5-year framework, we want to try to incentivize innovation and experimentation, which this kind of grant program seeks to try and allow. And also working through partners such as Future Screens to try to accelerate growth in the creative industries. We also would like to see art that crosses art form boundaries, including new ideas that use digital and those that build digital capability within the sector. So a little bit about the objectives of the program. Ultimately, this is about the creation of excellent digital art. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about how we define that later. So in order to do that, this might involve working in partnership with other artists, which you can do through this program, or working with other creative industries freelancers to bring their expertise, or indeed other creative industries organizations that can help. What we hope is that through your funded projects, you can not only create digital artwork, but also that you can develop your own skills and networks. From the research that we've done, we acknowledge that the creation of digital art is costly and it's time intensive. So this grant award is larger than usual to try and reflect that, to try to give you the resources you need to create excellent digital artwork. So because this is a digital art program, in order to be eligible, you have to be creating digital art. And I think in the next slide, I'll discuss how we're defining this. But also our next two speakers, so Dr. Declan Keeney, Director of the Ulster Screen Academy, and Deepa Manclair, who's an artist working in digital and immersive technology, will be able to give you their perspective and their expertise in this subject as well, which will be more than mine. So within this program, we sort of seek to either help artists to take their first step into digital with their artwork, or to work with a kind of digital technology that you haven't used before. And within the assessment, we'll consider how this can benefit your future career. If you're already using digital, you can still apply, but you'll need to demonstrate how this is pushing you further into your digital art than you have, how it's innovating your artistic practice, and also articulating how it will develop your future career. We'd like to encourage work as well in your immersive technology, and we're really keen to see projects that are working at the forefront of available technology, but also novel uses of well-established tech would also be encouraged. So in terms of how we're describing or defining digital art for this program, I wanted to try to describe how we see digital art as opposed to digitized art. So by digital arts in this program, we want to see work whose artistic process and creation fundamentally requires digital technology. In contrast, what we don't mean and what we'd consider as digitized art is work that can be captured and distributed digitally with technology, but the artistic process and creation doesn't require it. So I wanted to give, from my perspective, two ideas or competing ideas that would articulate how I'm thinking about this, but then also you can see how Declan and Deepa will describe this later on as well. So in scope, if we're thinking about visual art, if you create your visual art on software, on digital technology, you could then project this in an installation into a gallery. So the artistic process is digital within a piece of software. And then that can be displayed in the real world. It doesn't have to be distributed online through something like projection. So that would be in scope of this project. Out of scope, if you create your visual art on a canvas with a kind of traditional medium and then photograph it digitally or distribute it online, even though the capturing of that and the distribution is digital, we wouldn't consider that as digital art because the fundamental process of creation is a form of medium on canvas, which isn't digital. Another example that's in scope for the project would be if a play was written and created in an animation. The animation is fundamental to the final project. So although the script may not be digitally created and the voices could be captured by traditional audio recording, the animation is fundamental to, and that digital side of it is fundamental to the project. So out of scope, and something I'd consider as digitized is, say, a play that's recorded from a live performance, say via digital video camera, and then played back in a venue. So the artistic creation is really the interplay between the script and the live actors. And although it's captured digitally, that wasn't fundamental to the process of creation. So I hope I've kind of explained that because I wanted to try and give you insight into how the program was designed. So to be eligible, there has to be an element of digital arts within your program. It has to be relevant to your art form and also for your future career growth and creative growth. But also to come back to say that in a piece of digital art, you may need other assets which can comprise of traditional audio recordings, photograph, even physical object creation. They can feed into, but they aren't necessarily fundamental to the creation, if that makes sense. So these elements can be used or utilized as building blocks of your piece of digital art, but the creation of the work digitally is fundamental. Also to say digital and online, it's easy to think of digital and think of online, but that's not the case. Digital can mean online, and that can be an important part of your project, but digital art doesn't need to be distributed or hosted online. For example, given earlier, it could be an installation in a gallery, or indeed it could be a physical object that's been designed digitally and manufactured into that physical object through 3D printing or something similar. So also to say, if you want to discuss your project before you apply, please contact either myself or somebody in future screens, and you can talk through your proposal. So what you cannot apply for, ultimately it's an Arts Council grant, and the final project needs to be within the arts, regardless of where you work within the creative industries. Film or video production cannot be the final project. As I said earlier, this can be used as an asset within a digital project. So you can use sort of video recording, audio recording, but that's not the final piece, not a piece of traditional film. Also, to make mention to training courses, this project can contribute towards your income, and it can give you space to experiment and develop your skills, but it cannot be used for training courses or for associated expenses. Activities or contracts before we issue you a letter of commencement aren't eligible. We understand that there may be some preliminary work to scope a project, but projects in earnest can't start before the 30th of October this year. There's a cap on 20% for capital costs. Anything over 20% will be ineligible. This is for hardware or software fundamental to the project that you don't already have available to you. So this will be assessed on a case-by-case basis, and you'll need to demonstrate how these are vital to the project and prepare alternatives in case this isn't funded, because it may not be possible because they're assessed case by case. Also to make note that if you have costs already covered by the Arts Council, for example, emergency schemes such as the Artist Emergency Programme, Individual Emergency Resilience Programme, we cannot fund work that has already been taken, so this has to be something new. There's a couple of others I haven't mentioned in detail that I didn't focus in on. This isn't exhaustive, but it'll give you an idea. So I'd like then to give a little bit of information about how decisions are made. So when you make your submission to the Arts Council, it will be checked, you'll be eligibility checked by our ASO team. You need to make sure that you include all of the mandatory enclosures, which are listed in the guidance notes. So your history of artistic practice, detailed project budget, detailed description of planned project activity, art form appropriate support material. If you're undertaking a collaborative project, you need to have a history of artistic practice and the associated or the appropriate art form support material for both in the partnership. And if you're employed or in academia, you also need to submit a letter headed by your employer or academic institution that this isn't the concern of your employer or your academic course. Also to remember, you have to be a resident in Northern Ireland. You have to demonstrate significant contribution to the artistic sector for 1 in 5 years. So for 1 year within the last 5, you have to be 18 years or older, and you can't be in secondary education. So when you're eligible, I'll receive your application and all of your enclosures. Future screens will as well. We'll conduct an initial assessment, and that'll be done independently. Following our independent assessment, we'll come together in a moderation between the two organizations, and that ensures that both our assessments are put under scrutiny of both partners. To ensure transparency, the criteria that we'll use for assessment are covered in the guidance notes on page 13, and I encourage you to look over those. I'll talk a little bit more about them now. So the first two will look at you as an artist, and we'll look for within your application how you demonstrate the quality of your work and your contribution to the arts in Northern Ireland. And we'll look at your history of artistic practice for that, and also the question on page 3 of your application, how you address the criteria. We'll also assess your proposal, the strength of your proposal, the quality, innovation, and challenge, so how you're pushing the limits of your creative practice and your use of technology. And we'll also look at the detail and accuracy of your proposal. So have you have your project proposal clearly and concisely articulated. Demonstrate you have a clear understanding of it, that the activities are well planned, and that there's a clear outcome at the end of the project. We'll also look at the potential of your project, how it contributes to the development of your digital skills, and how these skills and the final project outcome will contribute towards your future career. We'll also look at, we'll look in more detail at career enhancement. So for you to demonstrate how you have the capacity to develop over the course of the project. So thinking about where you are now, where you'll be after the project, and how and why this project will be able to allow you to develop. Also, to specifically draw your attention to the question in your application on page 3, where you have to demonstrate how you meet these criteria. Please number these. If you don't number these, you will be ineligible. It's listed in the guidance notes. So you'll need to address criterions 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. You can give a description of how you meet those criteria. So a couple of key points that I said that I would go back over at the end of the presentation. Make sure you apply by the deadline. So prepare your application in advance so that any problems can be resolved. When many people leave it to the last minute, any technical delays can be very stressful or may mean that you can't apply by the deadline. So please prepare in advance. You'll receive a response email to tell you that your application has been submitted. If you don't receive this, please contact us to check up. Ensure you submit all the required documents, which we call mandatory enclosures. These are outlined in the guidance notes, and they're further described from page 9 onwards to tell you what these are. They're the history of artistic practice, detailed project budget, the description of planned project activity, art form appropriate support material, and the 2 conditional ones. If you're making a collaborative application, make sure you have a history of practice and support material for both partners or all partners. And if you're an employee, make sure there's a headed letter from your employer or academic institution that it's not their concern. So I'm sorry, that was the kind of the boring bit, and now you get the chance to have 2 more exciting presenters after me. So I'd just like to thank everybody for your interest and for attending. My name is Matthew Malcolm. I'm the Creative Industries Development Officer for the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. And I will pass over now to Dr. Declan Keeney, the Director of Ulster Screen Academy and co-I on Future Screens. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Morning, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen here very quickly. So hopefully everybody can see that. So yeah, good morning, everybody. I've been asked to stand in for my friend and colleague, the inimitable Professor Paul Muir, Director of Future Screens, who was going to give a keynote this morning. So I think this will be more of a footnote by comparison, but I suppose when I think about it, my beard's nowhere near long enough to substitute for Paul. Still, for me, this is genuinely an incredibly timely funding call, and one that is extremely important to me professionally and personally too, an area where we need to do more to support. So I'm delighted to be here, and thanks to Future Screens and the Arts Council for the invitation to speak. So Future Screens, of course, is made up of key industry partners, Northern Ireland Screen, and the 2 universities, Queen's University Belfast and Ulster University. It's an AHRC creative cluster project that to date has instigated over 1,800 different projects right across the spectrum, broad spectrum of creative and digital. So I guess I've been asked to set a little bit of context for the individual Artist Digital Evolution Awards, and to talk a little about examples of activity in this space already. So I would say I'm probably rooted on the digital side of this conversation. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Director of the Ulster Screen Academy at Ulster University and technical lead on the project that I'll talk about again shortly, the Screen Media Innovation Lab, which is part of the Belfast Region City Deal Innovation pillar projects. So I'm also a filmmaker, though, working in immersive environments at present. I have a particular interest, I guess, in emotional striping and research to develop more sophisticated emotional responses for stories told in virtual reality, rather than this cliched empathy machine, as Chris Milk christened it once. So primarily my work with the Ulster Screen Academy, though, is to develop talent pipelines, skills development, the facilities that needed for staff, students, and actually the broader screen industries and the community of art just to thrive. So our collective experience, I think, of COVID-19 has demonstrated why digital evolution is probably both necessary and very important and timely. For me, digital is just another way to frame the use of technology in our practice, but obviously in the context of this call, is a remit to use digital, or using a digital medium at least that you haven't worked in before, perhaps like virtual or immersive, for example. So as someone who studied music performance formally in a past life, and as a primary degree, then went on to work in broadcasting, creativity and technology have gone hand in hand for my entire professional life. So I worked on the craft side of broadcast television for many years at the BBC. And in many ways, that job was about unlocking stories, empowering people to tell their stories. So I provided the technology solution, or part of it at least. But when I left broadcast, it began to make my own independent work. What I quickly realized was that where art, technology, and creativity collide, this to me has always been the most exciting environment to work in. That liminal space, if you like, between technology and what technology can do and what artists want it to do. Has always been incredibly productive, also in an enjoyable space to occupy. So for me, the best outcomes and ultimately the most memorable work that I've had the good grace to be involved in come from working in that environment. Now I get to play in the metaverse. So to work with incredible technology that is changing everything, actually, film, TV, immersive, online, life, the screen industry certainly. So where we can see now, I can see a convergence of technologies like never before, a convergence of skill sets now, skills that are in scarce demand, and a metaverse emerging that is changing everything we do in some way and creating new mediums for us to use in our practice, and in this case, virtually. Of course, very quickly, when we talk about digital evolution, we come to the question of which comes first, which is more important. Is it creativity or technology? John Lasseter, who's a director, a writer, animator, even a voice actor, said that the art challenges the technology and the technology inspires the art. Conversely, Daniel Bell, a professor at Harvard, best known for his work in post-industrialism, said technology like art is a soaring exercise of the human imagination, which I like. Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins said there's nothing wrong with technology. It's when technology is the story and not the artist. That's the problem. I agree, but I also think that from my experience, artists also bring perspective to the use of technology. Their perspective, like Serbian performance artist Marina Abramovic, art comes from life, not the studio. So I think while it's important to think about technology, it's also really important to think about what we're trying to do with it. When I think about the question of creativity versus technology, art and digital, why would you get involved? I'm reminded of a story a senior producer told me many, many years ago now at the BBC, when we were discussing creativity and technology and which is more important. She told me a story about an air traffic controller and a pilot having an argument over their video. So the pilot arrogantly said to the controller, "You're only down there because I'm up here." Of course, the air traffic controller swapped back, "You're only up there because I'm down here, pal." So in a way, they were both right and yet so wrong. There is a symbiosis in what they do, of course, but it's the fact that we humans want to go on a journey to find something new, to transcend, to engage in something more interesting, perhaps, that we need the planes and a safe system of getting from A to B. So it's not necessarily the technology solution. Those flight paths are where the artists come in for me. Without good destinations, no one would want to fly there anyway. So our stories, our narrative, and ultimately our imaginations of what makes the destinations interesting. So it's not always the type of plane or the person flying it. However, to be fair, I suppose we all need some form of technology to get to those destinations. And actually, sometimes the journey can be very enjoyable. Of course, the artist and the technologically, digitally literate or savvy are not mutually exclusive. For some, it's ultimately a gap we need to start closing where we want to. However, increasingly, they're one and the same person, the technology savvy artist. Of course, I'm thinking here of people like Deepa Manclair, who will speak next as a prime example of an artist working with new emerging and immersive technologies to address societal challenges through innovations, which are both beautiful and breathtaking. There are other great examples like Louise Taylor from Little Forget-Me-Nots, who are developing a tapestry that reflects her experience of COVID-19 using artificial intelligent algorithms to develop artistic patterns that she and others are hand embroidering. So the work is similar in some ways, I suppose, to tapestry that was used to capture historic events in her past. It was also rooted in the use of tapestry to capture feelings of grief and loss at points of history. Kochi Samuel's work with Resist AV responded to the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020 as part of the Future Screens Rewriting the Narrative commissions. So Infinite Precious explores the preciousness of life from 3 different poets' diverse perspectives. Directed by Resist AV, this is represented as a series of experimental spoken word poems set to 3 electronic music pieces and crafted into a music video, drawing together a trio of elements of word, sound, and visual. And if we have time, I'm not sure we do, but we may get a chance to look at some of Kochi's work. Ulster Opera have been developing an augmented reality opera. While it's not an individual project, I accept, it does show how technology can enhance artistic expression. In this case, the performance of opera to reach new audiences in new ways. Lewis Smith, in the bottom left of this image, is a PhD student at Ulster University and a professional saxophonist. And he can play objects in new virtual environments. In fact, new virtual instruments that create new levels of accessibility and inclusion for diverse neural and physical ability ranges. Virtual instruments he created himself. Some amazing work being done in that space. Niamh McConaughey, top right, who is a PhD student at Ulster and an artist, is prototyping pain visualization software. Setting her practice as an artist has influenced her approach to combining art-based methods with focus on abstract poetry and visual mark making. Another example is that of Stephanie Hackman, who pivoted into using virtual reality in the context of visual facilitation and builds 3D objects in VR to aid organizational development. The list is ever growing, which is incredibly exciting to me. So I suppose, why go digital at all in your practice? Well, perhaps in the recent past, it's probably about resilience. Part of it might be about finding new audiences, like Zoe Heaton's incredible theatre work at Big Telly, and I think that's Nikki Harley on the bottom there, the incredibly talented Nikki Harley. Part of it might be finding new markets for internationalizing your art practice, but part of it is certainly about continuity of income, surviving, and there's no shame in that. Artists deserve well paid for this work. So one of the projects that I want to mention, and just to go back to some of the other work that's going in a broader context that is incredibly exciting in terms of, Northern Ireland PLC, if you like. I want to mention the Screen Media Innovation Lab. It's a project that Ulster University are leading on that I have great pleasure being part of the delivery team for that. One of these projects that I mentioned is this is an enabling project, and we're working with an incredible team at Ulster University led by Professor Frank Lyons. This is a £64 million virtual production complex that will be built in an existing harbour studio complex by and with our harbour commissioners partners. So this is a world-leading facility in every respect, right on our doorstep, but it'll enable new ways to tell stories, to experiment, to learn new skills, to engage with virtual environments in a way we could only have dreamed of a few years ago. For example, if you try to imagine a studio that has nearly 5,000 seamless LED screens in it, in the round with an LED ceiling, this is Disney's Star Wars, The Mandalorian, in the round, an LED ceiling with all photorealistic images on it of anything you want to see on screens, for example, anything that you can imagine. So The Mandalorian was one of the first series to use the technology, but again, what would artists do with this technology, I wonder? In virtual production, the screens are just a portal to a 3-dimensional world that has been built in a game engine, Unreal Engine as it happens in this case. Everything moves in relation to the camera, and yes, you can genuinely look around corners. So of course there's motion capture, which is an incredible opportunity for actors, for directors, for artists to get involved in creating new ways of working as well. And we'll also have 3D scanning stage. The Lion King, for example, was a film set built virtually. It doesn't exist in the physical realm. Instead, it's a digital world 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers wide, And then they sent the DOP, the director, with VR headsets in for a week to recce the locations. If they didn't like where the mountains were, they could move them 4 feet to the left, 4 feet to the right, or make them taller, or whatever is required, really, in real time. Then they use virtual cameras to fill it all or film it all in the virtual realm, as we can see in the bottom right. These guys are walking around the studio, but they are actually physically filming a film at the same time. It's a little head wrecking, I appreciate, but the technology has become, the technology has so much application, it's overwhelming. But, you know, we need artists connected into this to understand what we can do with that technology fully. Another thing I'd like to flag up very quickly is a smaller virtual production stage that will open in November here at Ulster University in York Street in our Belfast campus. It's a £1 million virtual production studio, has samples of all of the technology I've mentioned. And this is about empowering skills development and reaching out to the artist community, reaching out to actors, reaching out to directors, writers, to really start to understand the possibilities, and for artists to come in the coming months and to really engage with the technology and start to understand. Of course, it's a skills development pipeline for our students as well. So how might this technology be used in theatre, for example, or with actors in motion capture suits playing avatars, or anything you can imagine in real time? So it's an exciting time, but as I say, we must connect artists into the technology to create an environment where exciting things can happen between the technical and the artist. This scheme offers opportunities to connect with the research that I'm involved in and others at Queen's University as well. And to wrap up though, for me, the most exciting space is where artists start to subvert the technology, pushing the art of the possible, asking things of the technologies we digital anoraks didn't think was possible, challenging the status quo, indeed the very need for it all in the first place. So personally, I can't wait to see where those planes are going to land in the coming months. And as David Hockney said, I'm convinced that technology and art go together and always have for centuries. Of course, the century brings new challenges. And, you know, I think it'll be extraordinarily interesting to see what happens with this very important funding strand that's been launched today. So thank you very much. I want to now have the great pleasure, I should say, of introducing artist Deepa Manclair, who's also a visiting professor at Ulster University. Deepa is an inspiration to so many, and actually somebody who embodies everything we've been talking about today. So Deepa, over to you. Look forward to hearing about your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, if everybody can just bear with me while I screen share. Okay, I am going to minimize my speaker view so I can't see you. Can I just check? Everybody can see that okay? Somebody can just say yes?
Yes.
Okay, yep. Cool. Okay, I'm just going to, yeah. All right. So really glad to be here today. It's been brilliant listening to Matthew and Declan. So I'm going to share some of my work, and that intersects with me being an artist, but also running a health tech company specializing in the use of augmented and virtual reality, and being visiting professor in immersive futures with Ulster University. So I'm going to talk about 4 projects, and all of them are either AR or VR. So the first project was a VR piece that my company built, and is called Retina, which helps explain some of the principles behind my approach. In Retina, you enter through a mirror, and when you return to that mirror, having completed your journey, the mirror reads Retina, which is actually the word enter spelt backwards. And at the heart of Retina is a quote from Aristotle, where creativity and technical capability have to work hand in hand, and they rely on each other completely. And I think it's really interesting that both Declan and Matthew have alluded and referenced this key point several times. Neither can work on its own, but when they do work together, it results in the whole being greater than the sum of all its parts.
These books haven't been able to drop their letters for years now, so there's been no new stories. It's crazy, right? Oh man, look what you did! We're going to get new stories! That's brilliant! New stories!
So Discover ME, the second project I'd like to talk about, uses VR animation to share insights into the lives of people living with ME. And it's using the power of storytelling so that the viewer remembers what they see, hear, and experience with their entire body and not just their minds. So with VR, we can put professionals in scenes in the middle of real life stories that are normally never seen, heard, or experienced to help lessen the gap between actual events and personal experience. And now with about 20% of people who have had COVID experiencing long COVID, where the symptoms are really similar to ME, the need for this VR experience has become even more urgent.
My name is Joan. I am a mother, a wife, and a daughter. My world was always one of vibrant health, a happy family life, and with a career I love. But in 1999, I was plunged into a world I never knew existed, and I was stripped of everything I held precious. Overnight, I went from living life to the full to being rendered bedbound. There was no warning and no time to prepare for the nightmare ahead. I woke up with what felt like a flu, and I had no reason to believe it wouldn't resolve in a few days. But as the months passed by without improvement, and routine blood tests came back normal, I was told it was just a virus.
So one of my latest projects is an augmented reality street art app, which is actually available for free on both the iOS and Play Store now. And it was and is a response in terms of how we can maintain tourism during COVID. So this AR is developed on the Deep Love street art found in Dunbar Street in Belfast. We're still very much in the early stages of the adoption of AR. And at the moment, there is a rush to create apps and experiences that are often too focused on showing off the technical capability or dominated by marketing and advertising. And I suppose the question that I'm really interested in exploring is how can we use AR to redefine the digital space for positive action, and how can we move seamlessly between the physical and digital spaces? So here's a trailer to give you a taste of what the experience is like. And as the warning says, there is some flashing imagery. So the app, if you want to try it, is called AR Street Art. So Suru is another AR experience which assesses how physical and digital objects and information can coexist through the layering of content of the real world. In a twinning project between Belfast and Hiroshima, the AR Peace Wall app uses the international symbol for peace, the crane, which is called Suru in Japanese. And in this experience, the viewer sees the digital removal of the peace wall at Cooper Way to reveal a story of a little boy on the morning of the day the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima on the 6th of August, 1945. So essentially, Suru virtually replaces the peace wall with a story of survival, recovery, and unity. In Hiroshima, many of the trees affected by the atomic bomb survived heat emitted by the explosion, which was 40 times greater than the heat from the sun. And these trees, they actually epitomized peace in the aftermath of the bomb and in rebuilding that razed city. So this is the beginning of a process to explore AR's capability to reimagine divided spaces safely. And yet it is more than that. It is an opportunity to explore the use of AR as a tool for social justice in international peace building. So there will soon be 5 red cranes stenciled along Cooper Way Wall, and the AR Peace Wall app is available on the iOS store now and will be available on the Play Store, and that will be free as well. Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much to Declan and to Deepa for speaking today. And just to remind everybody that if you'd like to ask questions, if you want to put them in the chat function, that would be, that's the way to sort of ask the panelists. So I'll just say hello to Nola, who will be joining us from Future Screens for the panel as well. So the only question I can see so far was just a question about whether documentary format would also be relevant. And as Nola has already answered, that there are many ways that technology can be fundamental for the creation of your work. And it's how you bring that creation process to your art form as opposed to what the original content is. So hopefully Nola's question has answered that question. While you're thinking of questions, I have a couple that I might just ask to kind of open things up. So I suppose to Deepa, but Nola, you can kind of jump in as well. I wondered if from your experience, if you would have any advice for an artist who's maybe looking to take their first move into immersive digital technique or digital technology, or to kind of direct their existing creativity towards those sort of new technologies.
suppose, I mean, a really good starting point is to do some research online in terms of exploring what's out there. And I think if you are a creative that is also interested in coding and programming, that's amazing, because you've got all the skill sets and control in-house. Unfortunately, I'm not, or fortunately, I don't know. I suppose one of the reasons that I was attracted to start working in VR and AR was that opportunity to work with other people. Personally, because this is very much connected with the development. So in 2016, my father passed away, and I physically just couldn't be in a studio anymore. And sort of 11 months later experienced VR for the first time, and as a result of that experience, which was profound, really wanted to work with other people again, and VR and AR has done that for me. I have really enjoyed the creative process, which is really iterative. You know, what you finally produce may not be what you've had in mind at the beginning, but that's the joy of it for me. So if somebody's starting off in this space, if they're creative, I would kind of reach out to friends, perhaps if they're working in the technology or the digital space, and start having conversations and creating collaborations. And if they don't have access to that, then getting in touch with local companies that, you know, they could commission to work with them to produce content. But definitely spend a bit of time kind of doing their homework in terms of, and to view this as just another tool. You know, it is an extension of, say, a brush or whatever. So you wouldn't pick up the brush without having an idea of what it is that you want to express with it. So don't be overawed by what you imagine to be the complexity of the technology. Just view it as another tool in your toolbox.
Matthew, I would just add to that, if everyone can hear me okay, do reach out to Future Screens. I have put my contact details into the chat. We're here to assist you on your journey into using technology. We have a whole team of academics working in new emerging and immersive technology who can assist you to refine your idea, to think about where your journey can go, and to highlight particular techniques or aspects of technology that you may wish to use. And as well as that, we're also connected to a wide range of companies across the region who may be able to assist you on your journey. So, for example, in the calls that we have hosted together previously, I would have assisted people to find, if they don't have someone that they can speak to, I can reach out to companies who are in the space and see whether or not there's an opportunity to partner up, or even just to get a bit more information that will help you craft your idea. And Declan highlighted the example of Louise Taylor. And if we just think about her journey, I mean, Louise works in punch needle embroidery. It's a very, very traditional craft, working mainly on her own. And by partnering in with Future Screens and working with Dr. Daryl Charles, she has developed a new form of art making through using artificial intelligence to create algorithms to create beauty out of data. And all of that was a very joint process where Louise brought her creativity to us, and we looked at different ways of engaging in conversation with her to develop something beautiful. And there are many other examples that Declan highlighted, and obviously we have Deepa with us who is really leading in the space. So do reach out and bring any questions.
Thanks very much, Nuala. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions here, one from Kate and Valerie, which is, if you're working with another artist, do they also need to be resident in NI? And also, do all artists and partners have to be NI based? So from my perspective here, the lead applicant, so the person who's making the application, needs to be from Northern Ireland. Depending on where you can find the skills, if you can describe within your application if the skills that you need to kind of create the collaboration and complete your project aren't available in NI, then you can provide a justification as to why somebody might not be based in NI. But as long as the lead applicant is based in Northern Ireland, this should be okay. If anybody from the Arts Council team does want to jump in, if that's wrong, feel free. No, so that's okay.
Well, I think you're right, Matthew, because the lead applicant is going to be the one who the contract will be with. So as long as they reside, and as you say, if they give justification for not having a collaboration within Northern Ireland, then we would accept that, you know, because that's clear and defined.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Joanne. So let's see. We have a question. Hopefully a quick question to Deepa. Was the animation of the diver using art created by an artist, the artist of the mural? If I can pass it over to Deepa.
I was in touch with ADW Art, the artist, the original sort of artist who created that mural. So he did not create the animation for that. I've worked with 3 companies to realize that piece, but he was paid a license fee. And I think he provided some still images of the fish, perhaps that was used in the final piece. He is very much, he was involved in the process from the outset, because I wouldn't have created that piece without his permission and without sort of, you know, seekers also paying a license fee.
Thanks very much, Deepa. So we have a question from Eileen here. Is the funding for production, i.e. product, at the end, or research? So this is for the creation of digital art. So there can be research throughout the project to arrive at the final piece, but we would like to see a final piece at the end of the project. So I have another question here. This is a tight turnaround. This is from Andrea. So to unpack how you could cost the use of some of the tech, are there places we can go to quickly or resources we can use to assess the tech as part of our project with a particular interest in augmented reality? So obviously I appreciate this is a tight turnaround. So if there's an opportunity for you to reach out to organizations that may be able to provide this for you, even if they can give you an indication or a ballpark, or if you can get some correspondence to them around the project. So I realize obviously things can change. So I'd encourage you as well to touch base with Nuala and the team at Future Screens if you need to find other organizations that might be able to assist you with this project. I suppose the other point to mention is realize that if this is your first time moving into digital, or if this is your first time in a particularly new type of technology, there can be things that will arise during the course of your grant that are unexpected, as it were. And because of the tight turnaround, you may not have the project necessarily scoped as fully or completely as you would like. So at the point of application, you can describe exactly what you have been able to do and how far you've been able to go. And there will be an understanding from my perspective as the officer in this program that the course may change a little during the project as you adapt to the new technology, you find your feet with it, and you work out what the limitations are. So I know to some extent that doesn't answer your question, but hopefully that's okay as a start. And then just again to signpost you to Future Screens, because they'll have contacts with people who would be able to assist you with the project. So I hope that helps. Nuala, if you have anything else to say, obviously, please feel free to fire away while I read the next question.
Just to say, reach out, because we will have contacts on hand that we can connect you with to have those exploratory discussions. I see, Declan, you've unmuted. Would you like to add a comment to that?
I think it's hard to understate just, Nuala's our go-to in this space, because, as I said earlier in my own presentation, Future Screens have been involved in about 1,800 projects. So you can imagine the network that's there now, and actually some of these are groundbreaking, like Deepa's work and so on. And so there's an incredible depth there of access, I suppose, to people in the industry who are very willing to talk, because ultimately they may be part of the solution too. I mean, I think, you know, from my perspective, looking at some of the questions, you know, there's probably roughly 3 ways, you know, you become the solution yourself. You know, you train up, you learn, you engage. You can do that in so many different ways now. You know, you work with the solution. We find the actual answer for the project that you're trying to do is, again, is an enabling thing. And but the third thing really is, you know, definitely try to research what it is you want to work in the space, get a better understanding of it. Try, you know, look at the stuff on YouTube, talk to people like myself, talk to people that are involved with Future Screens, and you know, artists indeed that are in this space already. Try to get a sense of what it is, and build your understanding of what's possible. It's only really at that stage then you can push those boundaries and really challenge those that are involved in a project. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out, and include myself in that, clearly.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Nuala and Declan. So a couple of quick questions here from Andrea. Do you need to have just one lead artist for the application, or can you apply as a pair? There will have to be one lead artist. So one of you will need to make the application and the contract will be made in your name. So hopefully that helps with that. Matthew said, can the fund be used as proof of concept funding? And does that mean for the project to have an aim or a larger aim beyond the scope of the project, and for this to create a sketch or scaled down version? From my perspective, I'd say absolutely. If that proof of concept or that sketch is a piece of digital art, like a sketch of a more developed project down the line, from my perspective, that's absolutely fine. And in fact, if you have a larger aim for this and you can demonstrate how this is a stepping stone to that, I'd say that that's fantastic, and articulate that within your application. What I'd just like to say as well at this point is I can see that there's 17 new messages below this, and we're already at 11. So I think what we could do is I can have a look at all of these questions later on, and maybe write out brief answers to them all, and maybe we can publish that on our website. Because I don't think that we'll be able to give all of these the attention that you'd maybe like. So just to check if everybody else will be happy with that approach, and we can maybe cover a couple more before we have to close off the meeting. Yep. Okay. Everybody seems to be happy with that. Okay. So I've one more here from Owen. Wanted to pitch a story in live action filmed in VR. Does it have to be focused on the issue, or could you make something primarily as entertainment with the issues as a secondary feature? I think I'd say here from what Deba and Declan have both said, that the issue and the concept behind the work is the core of the work, and the digital technology is how you bring that to life, as it were. So how you raise that issue within the subject of the VR piece, it would be up to you. So I would look through the guidance notes and the assessment criteria and just demonstrate how you meet those. You can say your perspective on how you want this piece to be, but really it will be down to the assessment criteria. So, you know, you as an artist, the quality that you can demonstrate, your contribution to the arts, you know, how well articulated the proposal is, and the development of your career. So those are the criteria that we're assessing against. So if it includes that issue, then that's kind of the concept for you to develop your work. So that's my perspective on that, and I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in.
No, I think that's a good summary, Matthew. No.
Great. So there's a question from Nathaniel. Can some funding be used for outsourcing? For example, would an animator be allowed to pay a musician to create a soundtrack for the final piece? So that's absolutely possible within the awards. So within the guidance notes, you can read through them. Obviously, you're going to be the lead partner. You're going to be the one with the concept who's creating the piece of work. However, our finding from research is that for people, if they don't have the skills, rather than upskilling in that area, you know, they'll want to find the people with the right expertise to be able to deliver that element of their project. So that's absolutely fine. Just you need to break it down within your project, describe, for example, the soundtrack creator, ideally who that's going to be, the supplier, how much that's going to cost, and so put that in your budget and within your proposal. So I'd also say we're still getting new messages here. Keep putting the messages up, because I'll try my best to get responses to these even after we have to close the meeting down. Let's see. Can two individual artists put in two applications to work on different aspects of a single project? I'm not entirely clear about that. I think these are, one project is one project. So in initial concept stage for the design of this, it would be the two artists working in collaboration on the same bid and the same project within the 10K pot. So I can't guarantee, like if you link the two of them up, I can't guarantee that that would go in favor. That in essence, two artists could apply for different projects within this, but it wasn't envisaged that you'd be able to link grants like this together. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on that with any other information.
I agree with you, Matthew. It would have to be a collaboration rather than two separate, because the risk that you're also taking is those applications could be assessed independently, separately, and then there's a risk that one applicant could be successful and one applicant may not. So that puts the whole project in risk. So the best way to do it would be a collaboration, and it's looked at in its full identity.
Fantastic, Joanne. Thanks very much. Another quick question here, just to double check when the work must be completed by. So the projects are running from the 30th of October until the 31st of September. And I will just, I'll double check on the guidance notes and maybe check back whenever we formally respond to these, but it's in the guidance notes. If you read through the guidance notes, you'll be able to see the deadline is there, but off the top of my head, I think it's 31st of September.
30th of September is the deadline.
Yes, of course, because there aren't actually 31 days in September. Apologies. Yeah, and that's in 2022. So from October, you've got 11 months for your project. Okay. So there's a question here, can the work be a development of an existing project into AR? Under the guidance notes, this is the project can't duplicate existing work, and it also has to only be able to, you can only apply for funding for work created after your commencement letter, which would be on 30th of October. So my understanding of that is that it can't be the development of existing work. So you can't run a project into this and then do the AR. This would be a new project starting from the 30th of October onwards. And again, if anybody else has anything else to add to that, please feel free. We have another question here. Can the fund be used to pay for one-to-one tuition? That's a no. Training courses of any kind can't be paid for within the scope of this grant. What you can do is you can develop your skills. So basically this can give you the time and capacity to work with a medium, a digital technology medium that you already know about. You can also work in partnership with other artists with that expertise. So working collaboratively, you can come together and you can develop your skills, but you can't pay for one-to-one tuition. So there's a distinction within this bid. And if anybody else wants to add anything to that, please feel free.
Suppose just to add, the Future Screens NI program is a knowledge transfer program. So the model that we have is that you co-create. You will be leading on your innovative project. You have the opportunity to experiment, to enjoy it, and to grow in that space. And the model is very much based around working in partnership with others who may have specific skills or technology or equipment that can add to your project. And through that experience of co-creating and growing, That is how the kind of skills and capacity building and knowledge transfer happens. And we have multiple examples of where that has been successful. You know, for example, Daffod is here on the call from Ulster Touring Opera, who was one of our creative industry seed fund applications and very much branching into technology at that point. And now he's very much supporting others to engage in technology. And that's the exact kind of journey that we want to see to come out of this. So something very real that you will experience as an individual and go through that path of growth.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Nuala. And we've got a question here from Corinna asking, can we budget for time to upskill? This is a yes. So within the budget for this, your time as for how you work on the project is very much included. So there's an understanding that, especially if this is your new time working in digital or you're moving into new digital technology, the time for you to understand that technology and create a project from that is included within the eligible costs. So that upskilling time where you look at your own development or you work with other project partners to develop your skills is included for the grant. So I actually think at this point that might be all the questions. I think I maybe thought that there was a lot more than there were because I was panicking having to go through them all. So yeah, unless anybody else has anything else to add, I would just like to say a massive thanks to all the panelists for taking the time to come and speak, to Future Screens for helping us co-create this program, to everybody who's attended for your interest in the program. And I'd like to wish you all the best with your applications and the development of your projects. And all of our contact details have been in the chat, so copy and paste them quickly if you want to get in touch with anybody. If not, my details are on the guidance notes, and you can get in touch with me and I can direct you on to anybody that you need. So, okay. Yeah, if anybody else has anything else they want to add, fire away. Nope. Okay. So thanks everybody. And I'll look forward to seeing all your applications.